It began as a perfect morning. The sky over New York was an endless blue, painted with soft clouds that drifted lazily above the skyline. The Twin Towers, proud silver giants, stood tall over Manhattan, glimmering in the early sunlight. For millions of Americans, it was just another Tuesday. Commuters rushed through the subway tunnels. Office workers sipped coffee and checked their watches. Children laughed on their way to school. Airplanes traced white lines across the sky, symbols of routine and normal life. But above the calm, unseen by the city below, 4 commercial airlines had been quietly hijacked. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 roared out of the clouds and slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center between the 93rd and 99th floors. The explosion was deafening. Flames erupted instantly, shattering glass and sending a black column of smoke spiraling into the sky. For a moment, no one understood what had happened. News anchors speculated about a possible accident. Maybe a small plane had lost control, but the truth was far darker. At 9:03 a.m., as cameras broadcast the burning tower live across the world, United Airlines Flight 175 appeared on screen, flying low and fast. In front of millions watching on television, it tore through the South Tower in a fiery explosion that turned morning into nightmare. The impact sent a shockwave across the city. People screamed, gasped, cried, realizing this was no accident. America was under attack. Inside the towers, chaos turned to terror. Thousands were trapped above the impact zones, stairwells destroyed, air thick with smoke and heat. People called loved ones, whispering words of love, fear, and goodbye. Some prayed. Some wept. Some did the unthinkable, jumping from the towers, choosing the sky over the fire. Down below, firefighters, police, and paramedics flooded into lower Manhattan. They ran toward the buildings when everyone else was running away. Carrying hoses, oxygen tanks, and sheer courage, they climbed floor after floor, determined to reach those trapped above. They knew the risk, but they climbed anyway. At 9:37 a.m., hundreds of miles away in Washington, D.C., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, the nerve center of the U.S. military. Flames engulfed the massive structure. Inside, chaos erupted as men and women tried to rescue one another from burning offices and collapsing walls. The nation was now under a coordinated assault. And still, the nightmare wasn't over. At 9:59 a.m., just 56 minutes after impact, the South Tower, the second building hit, began to crumble. It folded into itself, collapsing in a roar of dust, steel, and terror. A massive gray cloud raced through the streets, swallowing everything in its path. Firefighters, reporters, and civilians were caught in total darkness. Screams echoed through the smoke as people struggled to breathe, to find light, to find life. On television screens across the world, people watched in disbelief. Tears fell, hands covered mouths. It was as if time itself had stopped. Then, at 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into a quiet field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But that flight was different. The passengers had learned of the other hijackings through phone calls. They understood what was coming and decided to fight back. In those final minutes, they stormed the cockpit, forcing the plane to miss its target, believed to be either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. Their bravery saved countless lives. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower, the first to be hit, collapsed. In less than 2 hours, both towers were gone. The skyline that had symbolized American strength and ambition was reduced to dust and silence. Nearly 3,000 innocent lives were lost, men, women, and children from over 90 countries. For hours, lower Manhattan was unrecognizable,
a wasteland of twisted steel, shattered glass, and burning debris. Emergency sirens wailed, ash rained from the sky like snow. People wandered the streets, covered in gray dust, searching for friends, for family, for answers. At Ground Zero, firefighters worked with bleeding hands and breaking hearts. Many of them knew their brothers and friends were buried beneath the rubble, yet they kept digging. The city's air was thick with smoke, grief, and disbelief. In the days that followed, New York became a city of silence. Posters of missing loved ones covered the walls, faces of mothers, fathers, children, co-workers, plastered on every corner, every lamppost, every subway entrance. People gathered in churches, parks, and streets, lighting candles, holding flags, and embracing strangers. The smell of smoke lingered for weeks, but so did something stronger: unity. Across the nation, people stood together. Blood donation lines stretched around city blocks. Volunteers rushed to help. Firehouses overflowed with flowers and cards from children. Even in the darkest moments, humanity shined through the ashes. President George W. Bush addressed the nation that night, his voice steady but heavy with sorrow. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack. America had been wounded, but not defeated. The following weeks brought pain, fear, and anger. Airports changed forever. Soldiers prepared for war. The U.S. launched the War on Terror, vowing to bring those responsible to justice. But for millions, the real battle was personal: to heal, to remember, to carry on. Ground Zero became sacred ground. Every year on September 11th, people return. Families, firefighters, presidents, ordinary citizens, all standing in silence at 8:46 a.m., the moment that the world changed. The names of the victims are read aloud, one by one, as water flows endlessly into two great reflecting pools built where the towers once stood. Each name, a story. Each story, a life. And as the sun rises over Manhattan on each anniversary, the sky is often the same: bright blue, cloudless, eerily peaceful, just like that morning in 2001. It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the human spirit endures. 9/11 was more than an attack on buildings. It was an attack on hope, on innocence, on the idea that ordinary life was safe. But it also revealed something extraordinary: the power of compassion, courage, and unity. Firefighters carrying strangers down endless stairs, office workers shielding one another from debris, passengers on Flight 93 turning fear into bravery. That is what the world remembers. More than 20 decades have passed, but the echoes of that day remain in the memorial lights that rise into the night sky each September, in the families who still mourn, and in the quiet promise that such loss will never be forgotten. Because on that clear September morning, the world did not just witness tragedy, it witnessed humanity at its most vulnerable and at its most heroic. 9/11/2001, the day that changed America forever, but also proved that even in the darkest times, the light of human spirit can never be extinguished.